The untold truth behind African migration stories. The desert is silent, except for the crunch of sand beneath heavy boots. A truck filled with passengers rattles forward, its engine whining as if begging to stop. 30 people cling to each other, packed into the open back, their lips cracked from thirst, their eyes stinging from wind and dust. Somewhere one man whispers, "We will see the sea." Another woman clutches a photograph of her children. She does not know if she will see them again. In the vastness of the Sahara, their voices are swallowed whole. Most people never hear these voices. When the world speaks of African migration, it speaks in numbers. Thousands crossing, hundreds drowning, millions displaced. Numbers become headlines. But numbers cannot describe the beating heart of a father who walks for days to feed his child, or the trembling hand of a girl who grips the side of a sinking boat. Numbers cannot explain why so many risk so much, or how their stories stretch across centuries of history, buried beneath the noise of politics. This is the untold truth behind African migration. It is a truth shaped by desperation and hope, by shadow economies and global power, by dreams that refuse to die even in the face of death itself. It is a truth where history and the present collide, where the echoes of colonialism still reverberate in every border crossed, every checkpoint bribed, every risk taken, and it is a truth often silenced, hidden behind walls, borders, and fear. To understand migration, we must first understand the dream that drives it. For many Africans, the journey begins with a simple idea. Life can be better elsewhere. In a dusty town in Mali, a young man looks at his barren farmland and knows the rains will not return. In a crowded suburb of Lagos, a girl with a university degree sells peanuts on the roadside because no company will hire her. In Eritrea, a teenager hears gunfire outside his school and knows that if he stays, his life will be claimed by war. Migration begins not with movement, but with longing. Longing for opportunity, safety, and dignity. But the road northward is not a road at all. It is a gauntlet. The Sahara Desert, stretching across 11 countries, is one of the most dangerous migration routes in the world. It is not only the heat that kills. Smugglers abandon broken vehicles, leaving passengers stranded with no water. Bandits raid convoys, stealing money, leaving people to die. Some migrants carry small bottles of cola filled with sand, not to drink, but so their families might identify their bodies when the desert claims them. The Sahara has no memorials, no gravestones, only sand, swallowing story after story. Those who reach Libya often find a new nightmare. In the chaos of civil war, Libya has become both a gateway and a trap. Reports from international organizations describe secret prisons where migrants are beaten, starved, or sold. Yes, sold. In the 21st century, slave markets exist where human beings are auctioned to the highest bidder. Some are forced into labor on farms or construction sites. Others are forced into prostitution. Families back home receive phone calls, pay ransom, or never hear from your loved one again. Many families, already poor, sell everything they have just to bring their son or daughter back alive. Still, for some, there is no turning back. The Mediterranean Sea becomes the final test. To stand on the coast of Libya and gaze at the waves is to look at both salvation and death. Migrants are packed into rubber dinghies that barely float, often with no fuel, no compass, and no captain. Some cannot swim, but they climb aboard anyway, because staying behind is certain misery, while the sea at least offers a chance. Since the year 2000, tens of thousands have drowned trying to cross. Sometimes entire boats vanish. Families never learn what happened, only the sea knows. And yet, despite the danger, the crossings continue. Because migration is not only about danger, it is also about courage. Imagine being 20 years old, knowing your younger siblings depend on you. Imagine being a mother who promises her children a life beyond hunger. Imagine knowing the risk, yet stepping forward anyway. That is not weakness, that is strength. That is the strength that drives migration. But behind this modern tragedy lies a longer story, one written across centuries. Migration in Africa did not begin with smugglers, fences, or boats. Long before colonial borders carved the continent into lines on a map, people moved freely across it. Traders from Mali carried salt and gold across the Sahara to North Africa. Nomadic tribes in the Sahel followed the rhythm of the seasons. Coastal communities sailed across the Atlantic long before the arrival of European ships. Movement was life, and borders were rivers and deserts, not paperwork and police. Then came colonialism. European powers divided Africa at a conference table in Berlin in 1884, carving territories without regard for tribes, languages, or cultures. Borders were drawn with rulers, slicing through ancient pathways of movement. Colonizers extracted resources, rubber, cocoa, diamonds, while restricting local mobility. Migration became a tool of control. Men were forced into labor for colonial economies, uprooted from their homes. After independence, the artificial borders remained, policed by new governments, but still serving global powers. Migration had changed. It was no longer simply a journey across land. It was now a journey through history's scars. The push factors of today are not random. They are tied to this history. Wars fueled by weapons sold from abroad. Economies dependent on exports controlled by multinational companies. Climate shifts worsened by industries in the global north, while African farmers bear the cost. Migration is not just a personal decision. It is the outcome of global forces that few migrants control, but all must endure. And here lies one of the greatest misconceptions, that migration is always toward Europe. In reality, most African migrants never leave Africa. A Burkinabe farmer may move to Côte d'Ivoire for work on cocoa plantations. A Somali family may flee to Kenya to escape violence. A Congolese trader may settle in Angola. Over 80% of African migration happens within Africa itself. But these stories rarely make headlines. What makes news is the minority who cross oceans, whose images strike fear or sympathy in foreign eyes. Even those who reach Europe find that arrival is not the end of their journey. Camps in Greece and Italy overflow. Bureaucracy delays asylum applications for years. Many live in limbo, unable to work legally, unable to return home, and unwanted by the societies they enter. Yet they endure. Some manage to find jobs, often in the shadows, harvesting crops, cleaning houses, working construction. They send money home, money that sustains entire villages. In fact, remittances sent by migrants amount to more than foreign aid in many African countries. While politicians argue about migrant crises, migrants themselves quietly fund education, healthcare, and survival for millions back home. But what about those who never make it? Their stories are the most silenced of all. In Niger, locals sometimes find abandoned groups in the desert, their clothes torn, their lips cracked, their bodies beyond saving. In the Mediterranean, rescue ships search for survivors, pulling shivering children from the water. Yet many slip beneath the waves unnoticed. The Mediterranean has been called the deadliest border in the world. Behind every crossing, there is suspense. Will they reach the shore or vanish into statistics? Still, migrants keep moving, because behind migration is not only despair, it is also resilience. Stories surface of young men who learn new languages within months, building businesses in unfamiliar lands, of women who become community leaders in refugee camps, of children who, despite trauma, still dream of becoming doctors, teachers, or musicians. Migration is not only about loss. It is about the stubborn refusal to surrender to hopelessness. The untold truth is that migration is not an invasion, not a wave, not a crisis without cause. It is the expression of humanity's oldest instinct, to seek a better life. Just as Europeans once migrated across oceans to America, just as millions left Ireland during famine, Just as countless peoples throughout history have wandered in search of survival, so too do Africans today. Migration is not foreign to human history. It is human history. And perhaps the greatest twist is this. While governments build walls and strengthen borders, migration itself continues to shape the future. It reshapes economies, families, and even cultures. It reveals the connections between continents, the inequalities that still persist, and the resilience that defines us. The migrant crossing a desert today is part of a much larger story, one that stretches back thousands of years and will continue long into the future. So when we speak of African migration, we must not speak only of numbers, or of boats, or of fear. We must speak of people, of mothers, fathers, daughters, and sons. We must speak of dreams and of the systems that crush them. We must speak of survival, of resilience, and of courage. The desert does not forgive, the sea does not forget, and the borders do not welcome. But still, people move. They move because hope is stronger than fear, because tomorrow is worth the risk, because to remain still is to accept defeat. And that is the untold truth of African migration stories. Not a tale of victims, but of survivors. Not a story of weakness, but of courage. Not an invasion, but an echo of humanity's oldest journey, the search for life itself.